Topic 8. Goals, means and interests of participants. International relations. The purpose of workshop, to analyze the concepts of purpose, means, strategy, national interests, of the participants of international relations and the role of force as part of the tools used by international actors to achieve their interests. The main provisions of the 1. Analysis of the goals of participants in international relations is not only one of the most important conditions for understanding their features, but also one of the most difficult tasks. The fact is that the goal is largely a subjective category. It can be judged only on the basis of the real consequences of the actions of participants in international relations. This is all the more important when you consider that the results of people's activities often differ greatly from their intentions. At the same time, each participant in international relations pursues not one, but many goals, and it is not always possible and necessary to study them all. In addition, there is rarely a complete overlap between declared and actual goals, and continuity is not always the rule. 2. Understanding the main goals of an international actor is of fundamental importance. In science, such an approach to solving this problem has been developed, which has proven to be quite fruitful. It is about assessing the goals of an international actor from the point of view of the subject's behavior, it is from the point of view of analyzing the consequences of his actions and not thoughts and declared intentions. 3. Based on the above approach, most researchers of international relations define the goal as the intended, desired result of the action that is its cause, motive. This applies both to supporters of political realism and to representatives of other theoretical schools of the science of international relations, including the Marxist and neo-Marxist trends. 4. Depending on the objectives and subject of the study, different criteria may be laid down in the classification of the goals of international actors. The main goals are considered from the point of view of their importance for the very existence of an international actor, so they are still considered vital. The achievement of important, as well as non-main, secondary, goals is not associated with the self-storage of the actor. Failure to achieve them does not entail the destruction of the actor or the loss of its autonomy. If they evaluate the possibility of implementation, then from this position they distinguish between achievable, real, and unattainable, and realistic. A special typology of goals is built based on the degree of their commonality and significance for international actors. This typology includes the eternal and temporal, absolute and relative targets. In the real practice of international relations, different types of goals are closely intertwined. However, this does not prevent them from retaining their independent meaning. 6. The concept of goal is close in content to another important concept for international political science: interest. Interest reflects needs formulated as goals, and is of particular importance in a situation of threats and a crisis situation associated with their strengthening. Therefore, the definition of national interest is always connected in one way or another with the problem of security, the identification of threats to the existence or functioning of the nation-state, and the search for means to counter them and overcome them. 7. The means include ways, methods and tools to achieve the goals. The variety of means can be divided into the following types: 1. Force, persuasion and exchange; 2. Force and negotiation; 3. Persuasion, bargaining; threat and violence. It is easy to see that, in fact, we are talking about a coinciding typology of means, the poles of which are violence and negotiations. At the same time, violence and threat can be presented as elements of force, persuasion and bargaining, elements of negotiations. Each of these concepts includes a wide set of ways, methods and tools to achieve the goal, which in the real reality of international relations are used in a variety of combinations, so their isolation in pure form is nothing more than an abstraction that serves the tasks of analysis. 8. It should be noted the increasing role of persuasion and negotiation, i.e. political means, in the interaction of modern participants in international relations. Such means involve the establishment of systematic, permanent connections and contacts designed to lead to an increase in mutual trust between actors. The success of political means is facilitated by the presence of common interests between the parties. But the discrepancy of interests is not an obstacle to the successful use of political means by participants in international relations. 9. The categories of goals and means are relative and correspond not to different events, behaviors and actions of participants in international relations, but to their different positions in relation to each other. A particular event, behavior or action is a means to a particular end, not to any one. It in turn can act as a means to another goal. No goal, even the most realistic, can be achieved without appropriate means. In turn, the means must correspond to the goals can be traced in Aron's arguments about the eternal goals of the state. To the eternal goals, he refers the desire of each state for security, power and glory. Since each political unit is independent, their rivalry with each other is inevitable. 11. Aaron emphasizes that the relationship between these two goals, security and strength, is associated with many problems. The fact is that a state's buildup of power does not necessarily entail an increase in security. 12. In the future, both of these propositions receive a noticeable development in the theory of international relations, which is present in the neorealists and neoliberals. Many observers note that the approaches of neorealists and neoliberals to the consideration of the goals of international actors have much in common. 13. Goals and means are dialectically interrelated categories. Establishing a correspondence between goals and means is reflected in the category strategy. Strategy is a long-term line of behavior that connects science and art in achieving a long-term goal. From this point of view, the strategy of an international actor is not so much a single doctrine as a method of analyzing the situation, assessing the directions of its possible development, comparing the obtained picture with one's own interests and choosing on this basis the most appropriate moment and the most effective means to implement the intended goal. 14. The end of the Cold War led to a number of major changes in our strategy. First, with the disappearance of a specific enemy and under the influence of the electronic revolution, American strategic thought from bipolar becomes monopolar. Second, it is increasingly moving away from European strategic ideas. Third, the content of alliances is being transformed. 15. There are four spatiotemporal areas of application of the researchers generally refer to three types of strategy: grand strategy, crisis management strategy, and peace strategy. The national or grand strategy of the state combines all the means at its disposal to ensure national interests, both in peacetime and in wartime. 17. Force and violence have long been the most widespread and decisive means in the arsenal of international actors. The concept of force is associated with one of the central problems of international relations, the problem of war and peace. 18. Since about the end of the 1940s, two approaches to the understanding of power, attributive and behavioral, have become most widespread in the science of international relations. 19. It can be said that Aaron anticipated some aspects of the structuralist approach to the understanding of power. The foundations of this approach were laid by representatives of the theory of interdependence, which became widespread in the 1970s. Cohen, J. Nye and others attempted to deduce the dependence of force on the nature and nature of a wide range of relations and interactions between states. 20. National interest, the conscious need of the nation for self-preservation, development and security. The state is the representative and defender of the national interest in the practice of foreign and international policy. 21. Liberals question the very validity of using the concept of national interest for the purposes of analysis or as a criterion of foreign policy. Since it is not possible to define the concept of national interest from this point of view, in the end, the researchers suggested that the motive for the actions of participants in international relations is not interest, but national identity. Speaking of national identity, they mean language and religion as the basis of national unity, cultural and historical values and national historical memory. The discussion in Russian science of the concept of national interest also revealed differences in its understanding. As in Western political science, the main divide in the discussion is no longer so much between objectivists and subjectivists as between supporters of realist and liberal idealist approaches. Representatives of realism believe that the national interest remains the basic category of all states of the world without exception, and to neglect it would be not only wrong, but also extremely dangerous. 23. Some conclusions can be drawn from the discussion on the validity of the use of the concept of national interest and its content. First, attempts to cancel the meaning of national interest as an analytical tool and criterion of the state's foreign policy are too hasty and groundless. 24. In short, national interests are determined by the state, and foreign policy is used to achieve them. Usually in the scientific literature, such types of national interests are distinguished as basic, indigenous, permanent, non-basic, secondary, temporary, objective, subjective, genuine, imaginary, coinciding, mutually exclusive, intersecting, non-intersecting. 25. The emerging global financial system and unified information space, transnational production and the World Trade Network entail the erasure of national borders and the transformation of state sovereignty. Fundamental changes have taken place in the world, among which the process of economization of politics, which continues to gain strength, stands out. 26. However, the reality is much more complicated. Under the influence of globalization, state structures, like traditional national institutions, are indeed experiencing devastating shocks. New actors undermine the traditional priorities of state sovereignty. Some researchers speak of deterritorialization at the end of